As the capital city of the United States, Washington, D.C. boasts a number of beautiful parks and historic landmarks, ideal for those interested in American history. However, there are a few things that you need to know before you visit this historic capital. This is Katie from Creative Travel Guide, and today we are sharing these things to know before you visit Washington, D.C. Looking for more travel tips? Make sure you hit subscribe and ring that notification bell. So firstly, we're going to look at the best time to visit Washington, D.C. Now, the best time to visit Washington is during April and May, when the city is full of cherry blossoms. March to May and September to November offers cool, pleasant weather with less tourists as well. As with most places in America, July to August is high season for tourists and the city gets very hot. Visiting in the fall before Thanksgiving is actually the cheapest time to head here if you're trying to travel on a budget. Also, hotels drop in price between Thanksgiving to New Year's too, so check the weather forecast if you're planning a weekend away. So let's look at the typical costs in Washington, D.C. Now, there aren't too many hostels in Washington, but you will find a few, and these dorm beds start at around $25 to $50 a night, or you can opt for a private room in a budget hotel for around $50 to $60. Hotels, guest houses and small B&Bs will cost around $120 to $200 a night as well. Now, there are plenty of luxury and high-end hotels in Washington, D.C., and these will cost at least $300 per night. Now, with transport, you can get a Metro Day Pass for $14.50. A single ride will set you back around $3. Taxis cost upwards of $12 depending on your zone and distance, so it's worth avoiding if you can. The great thing about Washington, D.C. is that a lot of the memorials, monuments and museums are all in a similar area, so you can walk from attraction to attraction without spending too much money on transport. Now, when it comes to food, there are a range of cheap options throughout Washington, D.C., as well as high-end restaurants. There are some good fast food spots, but not in all parts of Washington. Breakfast and lunches can be found for under $10, whilst budget dinners often range between $15 to $30. If you are looking for a 3-course meal for two in a mid-range restaurant, then you can expect to pay at least $70, whilst a high-end restaurant averages around $60 to $100 per person. Now let's look at how to get to Washington, D.C. Now, if you are flying into the city, there are a few airports to choose from. You can fly into Reagan National, which is the nearest and most convenient airport to D.C. From here you can catch the Metro Blue and Yellow lines or get a super shuttle or taxi into the city itself. You could also fly to Jules Airport. It includes a super shuttle or Washington Flyer bus to downtown Washington, D.C. areas, or we often find that you can get cheaper flights to Baltimore and then get yourself a train from here to the city. If you are travelling from a city nearby, you can obviously drive. You can take the Beltway Interstate 495, which surrounds Washington, D.C., or you can get yourself on a Greyhound, Bolt bus, Megabus, or Washington Deluxe buses, as these all stop at Union Station. From Union Station, you can catch the Amtrak or Red Line to your hotel. If you are travelling from New York, buses take around about 5 hours from New York to Washington, and prices start at around $24. Alternatively, you can get the train. The Amtrak serves Washington, D.C., with trains stopping at Union Square as well. This is great if you are traveling along the East Coast, with train routes available from Washington all the way down to Miami. Right, so we've talked about how to get to Washington, and now let's talk about how to get around Washington. As I mentioned before, Washington DC is extremely walkable. Many of the museums, monuments, and White House are all in the same area, so as long as you're happy to walk, then you shouldn't really have much of a problem getting around. The city also offers the Metro Rail and Metro Bus. They are safe and clean, and also an efficient way to get around the city too. Many hotels are conveniently located next to a metro station or bus route, so make sure you do some research in advance and use the Metro map to help plan your route. So there are many amazing things to see and do in Washington DC, and this is just a few of them. First of all, you have the memorials. You can't visit Washington DC without checking the Lincoln Memorial, Vietnam and Korean War Memorial, the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial, and the World War II Memorial. Also, whilst you're in Washington, make sure you check out the White House. You can also go to many of the Smithsonian museums. I will talk about those in just a minute. You also have the Tidal Basin nearby and the Arlington National Cemetery as well. So I mentioned the Smithsonian museums, and because these are iconic, I wanted to talk a bit more about these in depth. So these museums are open every day apart from December the 25th, and they are open from 10 AM to 5:30 PM. Now, apart from the 2 Smithsonian Institutes in New York, the rest can all be found in Washington DC, and most of them are in walking distance from the National Mall. The museums are free to enter, but you do need to make sure that you have a ticket, so book early if you are traveling with a large group. So I'm just going to run through some of the best ones to visit. The National Museum of African American History and Culture. This is the only national museum devoted to African American art, life, history and culture. The multi-level engaging museum is fantastic and a favourite of ours. Then you have the Museum of Natural History. This is a popular one with families where you can discover the world's scientific heritage and animal origins, or head over to the National Museum of African Art. Again, a great museum that showcases contemporary and traditional art on display from the continent of Africa. Now, a great one for children is the National Air and Space Museum. It is a great choice because not only do they have exhibits of space artifacts, but you can also see rockets, missiles, and various types of planes. There are so many museums and art galleries that are part of the Smithsonian Institute, so do your research before you go, and we will leave all of the different options in the description below. So we hope you have an amazing time in Washington. Let us know what you are most looking forward to doing in the comments below. Take care, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like it, please make sure you give us a thumbs up and hit subscribe. It really helps this channel to grow. Take care, and until next time, stay creative.